Welcome to My Healing is Your Healing, a podcast for the woman who's ready to stop performing and reclaim her voice. I'm your host, Celeste, and around here, we don't do surface level. We go deep. Each week, we'll explore concepts like self-discovery, radical honesty, and the kind of healing that rewrites your story from the inside out. This is a space for truth-telling, for remembering who you are, and for coming home to yourself, louder, braver, and more radiant than ever. So come as you are, and let's do this together. Let's begin. Welcome back to My Healing is Your Healing. I am your host, Celeste, and today we are talking about something a lot of women quietly struggle with, but we rarely name out loud. Dating from our wounds. Because if you've ever looked back at your dating history and thought, why does this feel like I'm having the same relationship over and over again, but with a different face? This episode is for you. I want to start by normalizing something that gets misunderstood all of the time. Chemistry is not the same thing as connection. You can feel intense chemistry with someone and still be deeply misaligned. And in fact, a lot of what we call chemistry is really just familiarity. And it's your nervous system that is recognizing a pattern that it already knows how to respond to. And familiar doesn't necessarily mean healthy. It just means recognizable. Your body says, oh, I know this feeling. I know how to survive here. And until you become aware of that, those patterns will keep finding you. Attraction often mirrors unresolved wounds. So if you grew up chasing love, you may feel drawn to emotionally unavailable people. If love felt inconsistent, you may confuse anxiety with excitement. And if you had to earn affection, you may feel most alive when you're proving your worth to someone. And that doesn't make you broken, it just makes you human. But it does mean that chemistry alone is a terrible decision maker. Because chemistry can be your wounds lighting up, not your intuition guiding you forward. This is the first interruption that we have to make. You cannot stop dating from your wounds until you're honest about what you're being pulled towards and why. Dating from wounds usually feels intense. Like you chase people who are inconsistent or unavailable. And the connection feels like this roller coaster. You've got these really high highs and these really low lows. And you wait and you worry and you analyze. And then you get a hit of connection and then you get silence. So you nudge and you reach out and you try again and you tell yourself that it's exciting. You call it passion. And you convince yourself that these butterflies mean that you're falling in love. But constant anxiety is not attraction. It is nervous system dysregulation. And you confuse worrying with wanting someone. You confuse anticipation or anxiety with intimacy. You confuse chaos with depth. And suddenly you're over-explaining, over-giving, over-performing, and you're waiting again and again for clarity, for reassurance, and for someone to finally meet you. And in that waiting, you ignore all of the red flags, because being with the wrong person feels safer than being alone with yourself. And this was me for years. I kept dating the same man in different bodies, different jobs, different voices, different interests, but the same emotional availability, the same push-pull, the same ache. And I told myself, this must be love, because that's what I had been shown. And TV shows had taught me that love was butterflies and longing and tension, but nobody had taught me what safety felt like. And nobody taught me that healthy love often feels quieter. It feels consistent and predictable, almost boring at first if you're not used to it. And they text you back, and they show up when they say they will, and they don't leave you second guessing. And then when you're used to that chaos, that steadiness can feel suspicious. Your nervous system doesn't light up and give you that high because it's not being activated. And you mistake that calm for a lack of chemistry. But calm is not lack. Calm is safety. And underneath all of these patterns, there are a few very common wounds that show up again and again and again for many women. The first one is the fear of being alone. Not just loneliness, but the deep fear that if you're not chosen, that something is wrong with you. That your life can't really begin without a partner. That being alone means that you failed, so you stay in these misaligned relationships because stillness feels unbearable. Silence brings too much up. And being alone means that you have to sit with yourself, and nobody taught you how to do that safely. And then there's invisibility. You don't feel seen in your own life because you've learned how to perform instead of participate. And you wear a mask and you shapeshift. You become what's needed for those other people. And being chosen by someone else is proof that you matter, because you don't know yet how to show yourself that you matter inherently. And then there's inconsistency. You've got high highs and low lows, and you're familiar with emotional unpredictability, so steadiness feels dull and untrustworthy, and you're always waiting for that other shoe to drop. You don't trust that someone can just actually be there for you, because historically they weren't. And then there's conditional love. The I will love you if you're good, if you're easy, if you don't ask for too much. So you keep earning love instead of receiving it. You keep auditioning instead of resting. And none of these wounds means that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you haven't healed yet. And dating from wounds feels intense because your nervous system is activated, not because your soul is aligned. You're pulled towards what you know how to survive. Your body says, I've done this before. I know the rules here. I got this. And to add to that belief that love must be earned, and suddenly dating becomes a performance. You cook and you clean and you accommodate and you overgive. You have sex before it feels safe. You do whatever it takes to keep that someone close. And you hope instead of ask. You imagine potential instead of observing reality. And hope becomes a substitute for clarity. But clarity doesn't come from waiting. It comes from watching what is. From noticing how someone shows up consistently, not how it feels good in flashes. From paying attention to your body, not the fantasy inside of your head. So this is where the shift begins. Not by blaming yourself, not by shaming your past choices, but by learning to tell the difference between familiar pain and true alignment. So let's talk about what dating actually looks like when you stop dating from your wounds and you start dating from your own worth. Because dating from worth doesn't mean that you suddenly stop wanting connection. It doesn't mean you've become cold or detached or overly guarded. It means that the center of gravity shifts. You're no longer scanning the room for who might choose you. You're checking in with yourself and you're asking, how do I feel here? And when you date from your worth, the questions change. Instead of asking, do they like me? You ask, how do I feel when I'm with them? Do I feel calm or on edge? Do I feel like myself or am I performing? Do I feel expanded or contracted? Do I feel curious and open, or am I already monitoring, editing, and adjusting? Instead of rearranging your life to fit theirs, you start asking, what would it look like if they joined my already full life? Not squeezed into it, not prioritized over everything else, but joined. You stop bending your schedule or your energy or your values, your needs to make yourself easier to keep. And this is subtle. It's not dramatic. It's not a speech that you have to give someone, but it's noticing when you're about to cancel something important to you and choosing not to. It's realizing that you're about to overextend and decide to stay home instead. It's letting your life stay intact while you date. Dating from worth also changes how you ask questions. You're no longer interviewing for potential. You're listening for alignment. You ask about values, about their lifestyle, about their emotional intelligence, and their emotional availability. about how they handle stress and conflict and disappointment. And you're not asking to impress or to bond with them faster. You're asking because these things actually matter to your life. And when something feels off, you walk away sooner. Not dramatically or angrily. No, it's some story about how they're terrible or broken, but you just leave kindly and clearly and honestly. You can say, I don't feel alignment here, or this isn't what I'm looking for. I enjoyed meeting you, but this doesn't feel right. And then you go. Not because they are bad, but because you're more clear. And clarity does not need your justification. And that is one of the biggest shifts. Dating from worth does not require resentment. It doesn't require blame. It doesn't even require closure conversations most of the time. It's just information for both of you. Now, let's back up for a moment because we skipped something important. Dating from worth feels very different in your body. When you date from self-worth, things slow down. There is less urgency, less chasing, less intensity just for intensity's sake. There is a calm where there used to be chaos and a consistency where there used to be confusion. You know where you stand, not because they've declared it, but because their behavior is steady and they show up and they actually communicate with you. They follow through. And instead of being bored by that, your nervous system will just exhale. There's curiosity instead of urgency. You don't feel like you're racing against time or trying to lock something down before it disappears. You trust that if it's right, it'll unfold. And if it's not, you'll survive it too. You don't rush the attachment either. You don't need to define everything immediately. You just let things be as they are right now instead of projecting a future onto someone else who hasn't earned a role in it yet. This is a big one. Dating from self-worth means that you stop falling in love with potential. You stop imagining who someone could be if they only shifted, healed, or settled, or improved. You stop building a fantasy relationship in your head and trying to drag the real person into it. You choose your boundaries over this fantasy. And you assess how someone's actions fit into your real life today, not someday, not after they change or after they decide, today. And maybe the most important shift of all is this. You choose from alignment instead of attachment. You don't need someone to stay in order to feel whole. You need someone to add, not to complete. You're not dating to be rescued. You're dating to see who fits beside you. And if that feels foreign or uncomfortable, that is okay. It means that you're learning something new. And if you're listening to this thinking, well, I don't feel like this yet, I want you to hear this clearly. Nothing has gone wrong. It is not a personality flaw. It's just nervous system learning your safety. And this is exactly why we talk about this type of work inside of the women's community. So if this resonates with you, come join us with the Radiant Women's Collective. This month, we are talking about self-worth in real time, not as a concept, but as something that you are practicing inside of your relationships and your boundaries and your daily life. Now let's bring this home to something practical. This is your toolbox item for this week, and I want you to treat this as an experiment, not a test. We're going to call it expansion versus activation. And in every dating interaction, ask yourself one simple question. Is this connection expanding me or is it activating me? Expansion feels steady and curious and safe, open, more like yourself, not less. There's space to breathe, space to be honest, space to move at your own pace. Activation feels anxious, urgent, dysregulating. You're overthinking, you're scanning the room, you're waiting, you're interpreting, and you're on high alert. Your body already knows the difference of this. You just have to be willing to listen and be silent for long enough to hear it. And here's the truth that I want to leave you with today. You don't need better luck in dating. You just need deeper self-trust. Because when you stop dating from your wounds, attraction changes. Not because there's suddenly so many better people out there. They were always there. But because you're choosing differently now. And familiar pain stops being magnetic. And alignment starts to feel like home. So if you want to practice in this community, we meet in the Radiant Women's Collective on the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month. The link is below. It's free, and you are so welcome there. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, you were never meant to dim your light. Thanks for tuning in and being here, for healing out loud, and for walking this path beside me. If this episode cracked something open or helped you remember a part of yourself, pass it on and share it with someone you love. For more support, free resources, or the next steps to your journey, head over to my website, myhealingisyourhealing.com. And if you loved today's conversation, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your words help this space grow and help more women find their way home to themselves. If I was your muse today, then my healing is your healing. Until next time.